Merci, Bernard.
Merci.
Thank you.
So sorry about that, technical issue. While they're setting up the chairs for our next panel, I'll kill a little bit of time and tell you a little bit more about my background. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a telecommunications consultant, and I do a lot of telecommunications and networking and edge work. I've been doing that for about, I don't look like it, but I've been doing that for about 30 years. So I have an extensive background, and I also do a lot of public speaking and a bunch of podcasting as well too. So I'm very pleased to just point out the two gentlemen in the back of the room from Between Plays. I do the tech section on their show weekly, and I'm very happy that they came here as one of our media sponsors. Okay, so I think we're set up. So what I'll do is I will invite our moderator Mandeep Singh to come up, and the rest of our panel guests. Good friend Samer Bichet, Radu Celia, and Perry Chappell. I hope I pronounced everyone's names correctly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Yeah. Well, I'm just setting up the mics. Please, gentlemen, thank you. Well, thank you so much, audience. I mean, it's Friday, it's 4:30, right? It's 4:40, in fact. I mean, if you're still here, thank you so much for your dedication for this, in this sector. Truly appreciate it. My name is Mandeep Rihal. I am the Business Development Manager with the Ontario Centre of Innovation. Now, before I tell you more about my company, I want to thank the panel for joining us. We have some amazing speakers here. Before, I mean, like, you know the names, you can read what they do, but I want to give you a few minutes maybe to introduce your companies first. I mean, most of you, I have some booths set up here, but maybe all three of you, we'll start with you, Perry, if you can kind of introduce Zing, your company, to the panel, to the audience.
Thank you very much, Mandeep, and thank you very much for this. It's a tremendous, tremendous event. So my company is in communications. We're all about 5G, fixed wireless access, and bringing immersive applications to consumers' home with an innovative CPE integrated device.
Samir?
Hi, it's a great pleasure to be here today, and I want to give a special thanks to Kader. Honestly, he's done an amazing job, and so thank you, Kader, setting it up. Yeah, I'm Samer Bichet, CEO and founder of Iristel, but I'm wearing another hat as well. So Iristel is a competitive local exchange service provider here in Canada. What that means is we're a facilities-based provider by the CRTC. We're providing service to primarily B2B. So if you've ever used Zoom or Uber, or even gotten in a connected car like a Tesla or Volvo here in Canada, that actually runs on our infrastructure exclusively. We have a nice wireless brand, which is a mobile network operator in Arctic Canada. So if you go to Whitehorse or Yellowknife, you'll be roaming on our network up there. And the other hat that I'm wearing is Carrier One, which is a decentralized 5G DeFi project that we're working on. And you might have stopped by our booth today, but yeah, so usually you don't get both an incumbent or a competitive local exchange carrier that's actually promoting DeFi networks, because it's usually an oligopoly, but nonetheless, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Radu?
Hi, honored to be here, and you know, again, thanks, Kader, for the opportunity to bring all this together. I'm CTO of Blink Networks. Probably Blink Networks is one of the few companies that are building 4G and 5G equipment in Canada. We are for about 10 years in the business. Prior to that, I've been CTO and VP of Engineering for Redline Communications. That is, well, let's say, established radio vendors in Canada, and I would say worldwide in vertical markets. It's always been a pleasure and a challenge to try to keep technology in Canada rather than sending it somewhere else. It's not easy, but we're doing well right now. We built 5G and 4G small cells, mostly focused on US market, because right there it seems the customers are a lot more forthcoming than in Canada. But hopefully at some point before retiring, I'm going to build a network in Canada as well. So yeah, that's
Fantastic.
about me.
Radu, thank you so much, everyone, for kind of introducing your companies, right? So as you can see, there is a lot of experience on the panel here, especially in this sector, in this domain. So to kick things off for this panel discussion, maybe just to sort of set the stage, like what do you, from your point of view, right, from your perspectives, what are the challenges of the existing telecommunications technologies, right? LTE, 3G, 4G, and why 5G, right? Why 5G, and how is it going to affect the edge computing and the cloud computing capabilities? We'll start with you, Perry.
Thanks, Mandeep. So that's a lot to answer in one question, but let me take a stab. So look, everyone's heard of IoT, and we've all immersed ourselves in IoT. We've all invested in IoT. Well, there's a lot of endpoints. So the architecture before 5G just didn't support the number of endpoints, like hard stop. So that's why 5G was necessary. So we had the addressability, and coming with the endpoints, some of them are simple sensors, but some of them are high bandwidth cloud gaming. Some of them are even higher bandwidth going into enterprise. So now the bandwidth requirements go up. Well, that wasn't solved by the 4G backbone. And the latency. These new applications demand, we've heard it earlier in the day, extremely low latency, so we can have collaborative processing at the edge, between nodes, in MECs, in PicoMECs, all of that. So again, not met by the network. So it is an inevitability that the network had to change to meet these application needs.
Fantastic. Samir?
Yeah, it's really an orchestration that has to happen between both last mile, so like the edge, the tower, core, the cloud, let's say. So it's edge and cloud computing power that has to evolve. Also, there's been a lot of talks about, we hear about Web 3.0, but we don't hear a lot about Telco 3.0, right? And there's many reasons. Maybe I'll split up the problem into two. We have Canada, which is very, the oligopoly basically that doesn't allow for an ecosystem to flourish. And it's very hard to build a network in Canada. Actually, the words of this Egyptian billionaire that tried to build the wind mobile, Sawiris, he said that it was easier for him to build a network in North Korea than in Canada. And so that's kind of the protective approach that we have here, which obviously prohibits a lot of the innovation that spurs, because we have some great minds. If you look at Nortel, BlackBerry, Teleglobe networks back in the day. So there's a lot of great minds that unfortunately left that could have spurred that ecosystem right here in our backyard. But just going back to the discussion of Telco 3.0, it's really an orchestration and aggregation of different technologies and layers that allows both fiber, both wireless, both satellite, especially with the advent now of LEO, like low Earth orbit satellites, which have some low latency. So that combination, and also the advent of like some of the new blockchain with the proof of stake, not proof of work, so that energy consumption is better. We're on the right track, but I still think that the whole 5G concept is still, we're far from it. And you really start realizing that we're nowhere close to where 5G should be when you start seeing ads popping up for 5G plus now. Well, what was 5G a year ago, right? Because you see 5G plus, well, what was 5G? What is 5G plus? So there's still a lot of work to be done. I want to call it that we're probably at like 4.7 5G with all the, because you're only as good as the weakest link. And the weakest link, there's a lot of weak links in the chain. So 4.7 5G is what I'm calling it.
Well, there's a lot of controversial stuff there. We will go there. But before that, Radu, your perspective.
So I don't want to enlarge the controversy because it happened that I'm absolutely on the same line with Samir here. But we have to look this way. Always it has been a technology progression in terms of standards, okay? And I've been part of that. I worked a lot, even Wi-Fi. then WiMAX, then LTE, then 5G. Okay, we are here. The question is, okay, how can we leverage that? How effective can we leverage that as an end user? And the question is always comes, okay, we can leverage as the major carrier will let us leverage, okay? If you ask my son right now, what you can live without, 5G or 4G or Wi-Fi, he's not going to have 1 second hesitation and say, you know, Daddy, I want my Wi-Fi. Okay, why is that? Very simple, because the proliferation of Wi-Fi and the idea that everyone can build its own network, the low cost of entry for every private enterprise and venue owners to build its own network. Very simple, and this is where we are today. And I think if the 5G would follow the model, what Wi-Fi did good, we are going to be in a tremendous innovation place in the next 4 to 5 years. If we're going to keep 5G as the toy of major OEMs and carriers, then it's going to be complicated.
If I can add something here. Yeah, Norado brings up a great point, and also regarding like that whole spurring of innovation. So the U.S. did launch this whole CBRS band, which is the Citizens Broadband Radio System, and the concept there is you could literally get your 5G spectrum for free. You just gotta literally click online, basically apply for an application, all real time with the FCC. You get a certificate, and you're able to deploy a node using your address, your latitude and longitude, and innovate using spectrum that is available on your smartphone today. Now, the US is a bit of an anomaly, but I love the initiative because eventually you're gonna run into congestion, the band is not gonna be enough as more people do it. But the beauty here is you're able to incubate and start that ecosystem right within the US, and hopefully one day it flourishes and goes global. Something that we lack here in Canada, unfortunately, and hopefully maybe in other parts of the world they're working on it, but we're, the US is definitely leading that space.
So I just want to add one thing to that because it burns in my brain. So I was at Mobile World Congress, I'm sure you were in September, and I had a major US operator ask me for support for simultaneous public access and private access in the same gateway with segmentation between the two networks and isolation, and saying this is the first of many requests for this. So that's the proliferation of that free spectrum. They're having to embrace it.
So, I mean, like, just you made some great points there, right? I mean, and when you look at the world outside, right, there's so much advertising around 5G and all these major telecom companies which claim that they have like 5G connectivity across various communities in Canada. So now we are in this metaverse and 5G conference. So my question to you would be, from a metaverse perspective, is it enough, like about the major telecom companies with their 5G networks, is this enough for the metaverse companies to transition to 5G? Right, I mean.
We're definitely not yet, not with the existing, I mean, you drive an hour north of Toronto, you're lucky if you get 1 bar of service, right? I mean, so we're far from it. The good news is there is a path, the ecosystem is there, the 3GPP stack for interference mitigation and band aggregation and all that, technology is there. It's just a matter of adopting it, installing it, and that's where kind of the whole decentralized network model now has to kick in, because just back to the Wi-Fi point, Wi-Fi is everywhere, right? And if you can now use a bit of Wi-Fi, aggregate it with the whole decentralization of rolling out networks, yes, you can get there, just not yet.
Perry, what do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm a numbers guy, so I like to talk a little bit about numbers. So that's an iPhone 12. So that's not brand new. It's 2 years old. That's a mature Qualcomm modem. That's an X55. It's capable of about 2.5 gigabits per second download if the network could feed it that fast. When my wife drives the car, I'm on Ookla all the time, just measuring things, right? I'm kind of geeky, and she thinks I should turn that off. So on average, on the 401, it's 200 to 250 megabits a second. Then you hit a bad one that's like 50 or 20, but it's usually over 200. Changhua Telecom on the street in Taipei with that same 2-year-old modem, 1.3 gigabits down. And that's just a statement about numbers.
Man after my own heart, though, because I do the same thing, the speed testing all the time.
Radu?
So I would say if we see 200 meg everywhere, that's going to be a good start. But if you go from here to Ottawa on Highway 7, you're done. So you're done with your phone call, not with the data. Okay, so basically I think first and the most important priority for Canada would be to connect the rural, okay? And to be able to connect the rural as an operator, a vendor, we need to have the vehicle that is the spectrum, point blank. We have the spectrum. You can't believe how much changed in US because of CBRS. Not only it was a great implementation, I would say being in the middle of deployments there, it was, I would say, terrible implementation, okay? But the fact that this 50, 75 megahertz of general available spectrum, it's there. There are people in the rural area right now, they have 2-3 options of service because there is already, a flourishment of ideas. Decentralized, again, it's going big time in US, but we need spectrum. And we need spectrum that is out of, let's say, spectrum like Wi-Fi, okay, where everyone can do at the low-cost entry, can connect people. And when that is going to happen, combining this with Wi-Fi, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, link aggregation, decentralized, it's going to be very easy to run an ISP, and that's the beginning. When people are going to be able to run local ISPs, we have a fiber point of presence and decentralized concept. This is when everything is going to start happening for the rest of the Canada, not only for the urban areas.
So,
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with Radu, but one thing I want to maybe disagree a little bit on is it's not just the spectrum that we need, is the regulatory and government cooperation and support to allow this ecosystem to develop. So maybe some of you have seen some of the announcements recently about Shaw and Rogers, the MVNO decision that came out from Industry Canada. They call it, MVNO stands for Mobile Virtual Network Operator, which, I've been building networks globally for over 23 years, and there's nothing virtual about that decision. I mean, if government's going to deploy a bold statement and say it's a mobile virtual network operator, then take the word virtual out, because what they're requiring you to have is spectrum, radio access networks, which is not virtual anymore. So I love the decision because it actually helps ICE Wireless as a regional operator. However, it hurts consumers to name it virtual when it's not virtual, because now that ecosystem cannot be developed because you need spectrum, back to the point. So it's a lot more than spectrum. It's government and corporate collaboration here.
Well, it looks like Canada is not ready for 5G yet, and someone who works with the Ontario Centre of Innovation, I just hope that we be there soon. Usha was just here, saying 5 minutes left. So very quickly, we want to unleash the power of 5G, right? There's so much hype around 5G and how it is going to solve all the problems of the metaverse. So my question to you is 5G the silver bullet which is going to solve all the problems of the metaverse, or are there limitations of 5G and we have to wait for the next G and the next G? So maybe we'll start with Radu, if it's...
I believe 5G has everything in the toolbox to do that. Okay, so innovation is there. As Samir said earlier, all the specs, all the technology capabilities are there. The question is those capabilities, when they are going to be brought alive. And we will see them available to everyone. Low latency is there, capacity is there, if it's spectrum. The radio ecosystem, it's very mature, okay? So I don't see anything stopping us except competition. Competition is nurtured with spectrum and government support to have more than 2 carriers eventually.
Thank you. Yeah. Samir?
Yeah, I think it depends what problem we're trying to solve. If we're talking just about 5G, it's definitely the beginning of many good things to come. But we still have to address power. We still have to address bandwidth. So bandwidth is doubling and potentially even quadrupling year over year in terms of just the whole metaverse concept. Security is a big thing. Even with Web 3.0, blockchains are being hacked, portals are going down. So that's going to be a big concern. Is now you're retaining the data on this Web 3.0 world, but then are you trusting that you're actually the proper vault to protect it? And then regulatory. Now, as things spread out, because at the end of the day, it's a kind of hybrid approach between a decentralized world and centralization, right? Because you still need to interface to a government body. Where would the regulator go to enforce action if now everything is spread over this vast 5G metaverse, right? So there's a lot of questions still to be answered, but it all starts with spurring that conversation and then opening the ecosystem so that we learn.
Fantastic. Thank you. Perry?
Thank you. And look, one other thing that always bothers me is kind of where is the application, where is the data, and where is it next, right? So I mean, I always believe, I'm an IBM guy from a long time ago, like a really long time ago. So they invented something called client server, and now we call it a bunch of new things, but it's essentially collaborative processing. So when it gets to your security point, Samir, and I completely agree, I mean, what's wrong with having the equivalent of a hard wallet, but it's at your house, registered at your address with not 2-factor authentication, but with 4 or 5-factor authentication. So somebody basically has to break in and kill you to get access to it, at which point you don't care they've stolen your money, right? So whatever it is that we can do to force a little bit more abstraction, even definition of edge. Is the edge your house? Or is the edge the radio tower that's closest to your house? Or is it both? But getting things that it doesn't have to go back through that central spike and consume, what are precious bits of spectrum so that it's self-contained. This is really, really important. I know it's coming, right? But we just haven't rolled that out yet.
Fantastic. All right, I think we are out of time almost. So I want to thank you all the panelists for joining us.
Do we have a question?
Sure. I mean, do we have time for a question? Let's take one question, please.
I won't use the microphone because I'm a quiet person. Humber College is working now on digitizing the spectrum allocated for television broadcasting and is looking to shrink it into a digital. Therefore, you've got a larger area now available for digital allocation. Are you familiar with that? What is it called? I don't have my notes with me.
You're talking about the white space that got reallocated? Yeah.
If current spectrum is now 12, as a unit of 12, it's going to go down to 1 for size, and now you've got that allocated spectrum of 11 to turn into digital. Are you familiar with that?
Probably it's white spaces, I guess. Yes.
Oh, there's another name for it.
Yeah, 600 megahertz.
As I see it, probably white spaces would be very good for coverage because it's if that's what you're talking about, because it's a low frequency and will do great in coverage, but it's not a lot of spectrum there, and I don't think it's usable at this point in large amounts, so you can really make a difference to 5G, let's call it like that, okay? But I think for rural coverage, white spaces, if it gets freed up, it's going to be a good thing happening. The question is who's going to get access to it. Right now, I know everyone has at a certain extent, which is good. The question is if it's not going to change, sorry.
There's already been an auction on that spectrum as well, so it is being deployed, but it's not good for densification, it's good for range.
Fantastic. All right. I mean, surely there are more questions here. So please catch these panelists outside during the cocktail and have the discussion, right? That is what we want to foster here at this event. Panelists, again, thank you so much for your time. Pleasure.
Thank you, Radu.